I suspect people will attack you in terms of your credibility. Could you restate once again your credentials?
I'm a programmer. I worked for NASA, worked for ExxonMobil, worked for Florida Department of Transportation, and other elements of my story, because this company, well, let's get into it. Why not? This company also, they have NASA contracts, and they were basically downloading tons of information, I mean gigabytes worth, and handing them off to this little Chinese guy named Henry Ni, and it didn't seem right, and he was hacking things, and I wrote a program for DOT that allowed contractors to send their information into DOT, and he was kind of the quality assurance guy for software. He put a wiretapping module in the program that went out to the contractors so that it actually sent everything they sent back to Yang. So I reported all this, and just last March, I think, he was arrested for attempting to send anti-tank missile chips to the capital of Communist China. So if that's correct, this is such a small thing. Of course, I think he only got a $100 fine. And no time.
Thank you. Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs-Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now going to
Dianne Feinstein and a Chinese spy, the unsuspecting mole who got a front row seat to the senator's dealings for 2 decades. Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Cook.
And I'm Ken Bastida, and let's get right to Night Beat's Andrea Borba live in front of the Chinese consulate in San Francisco. Andrea?
Well, Ken, Elizabeth, the would-be spy was apparently recruited during a family vacation, and his mark, Senator Dianne Feinstein. The Spy Who Drove Me sounds like the title of a James Bond movie. Instead, it's a rip from the headlines reality from Politico and the San Francisco Chronicle about Senator Dianne Feinstein. First, Politico revealed that a Feinstein staffer was a Chinese spy. Then, in Matir and Ross, more. Citing an unnamed source, the column revealed the Chinese spy was Feinstein's driver for 20 years, who also served as a gopher in her Bay Area office and was a liaison to the Asian American community. He even attended Chinese consulate functions for the senator. Senator Feinstein was the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time and was reportedly mortified when the FBI told her she'd been infiltrated. KPIX5 security analyst Jeff Harp, former assistant special agent in charge of the San Francisco FBI office, says he isn't surprised the San Francisco senator was targeted.
If you think of the number of government employees there are that are in positions of trust and confidence, anybody that sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee, they all have a top secret security clearance and even higher, and those people are all prime targets of opportunity. This is no different than what we would do on foreign soil to try to recruit those same individuals into our intelligence network.
The investigation concluded that the driver hadn't leaked anything substantial, and Feinstein forced him to retire. Feinstein isn't the only target of spy games in the Bay.
So the Bay Area has a unique position in the espionage community. There's a lot of what you want to call industrial espionage, and also people who are in positions of trust and confidence within high corporations.
It was just last month when a former Apple engineer was arrested for trying to take the company's autonomous car secrets to China. And remember the papal-like puffs of black smoke coming out of the Russian consulate in Pacific Heights last September? Right next to an odd array of communications towers? Harp says kicking those so-called diplomats out of the country hasn't slowed espionage.
Just because we shut the Russian consulate does not mean that the Russians are no longer interested in what goes on here in the Bay Area. China the same way. The Chinese approach things from a little bit different, but they also have an interest in, the economy here, how to get political influence here.
Now, Feinstein's office says they do not comment on personnel matters and that no one here in the California office has security clearance. The FBI also did not comment on this case. On the Night Beat in San Francisco, I'm Andrea Borba.
President Trump took aim at Senator Dianne Feinstein at an Ohio rally over the weekend. The Democrat rocked by recent revelations her office had been infiltrated by a Chinese spy who worked for her for nearly 20 years.
And speaking of China, it's just come out that the Democratic leader and the leader of the Russian investigation, Dianne Feinstein, had a Chinese spy as her driver for 20 years. And she's leading the Russian investigation, if that's what you call it. How about leading? No, she's leading the Russian witch hunt. A Democrat-inspired witch hunt.
And we have breaking news for you tonight. The Daily Caller is now reporting the identity of Feinstein's so-called Chinese driver. It turns out he was quite a bit more than a driver. Joining us tonight, Daily Caller's investigative reporter, Luke Rosiak. Luke, great to have you with us. And this is remarkable. The identity first of the spy who worked, quote unquote, as Feinstein put it, as a driver for 20 years.
This is a guy named Russell Lowe, L-E-W-E. He's a Chinese American who was her office manager for 20 years, so he's not a low-level guy.
Did you say office manager?
He was office manager in San Francisco, so he was higher up. He was meeting with ambassadors. He was, attending high-profile events. He was not a gopher. He was not just a mere driver, as Feinstein characterized him.
Well, perhaps she mischaracterized or misremembered. That's quite a different matter. And as office manager, he would have access to all sorts of information, as well as the comings and goings of Dianne Feinstein, who served as the chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence for years and years.
Yeah, and as a driver, because that was part of his capacity, presumably, he was in a position to overhear pretty much more than anything.
Right.
And as you heard in Donald Trump's kind of clip, she basically shrugged about this when it came out. When the FBI told her that this guy was working with the Chinese government, she didn't tell anyone. She didn't even tell her own staff. She just let him retire. So when you look at that tweet, she says, oh, well, the Chinese were approaching my guy, but I made sure he didn't work here anymore. They weren't approaching him, they were working with him, and she let him, she phrases that carefully, because she didn't even fire this guy. This guy retired with a pension. He is now working at what appears to me to be a propaganda outfit in San Francisco, pushing dirt on Japan. So this isn't a guy that was merely recruited by China. He's a sort of a player in these geopolitical warfare battles, sort of this militant Chinese guy who's professionally involved in this kind of thing. And he's out there actually continuing to make speeches where he is billed as a former aide to Dianne Feinstein. And that's what happens when you cover up things like that. The people get to go ride your coattails and continue to associate with you. He's not disgraced. He's still out there actually meeting. He met with a Congressman, Mike Honda, recently. He's still associating with these Washington types. He's still part of the political scene because Dianne Feinstein did not take swift action.
And his name again?
Russell Lowe, L-O-W-E.
It's amazing. Chinese American, still in San Francisco, and without belaboring the point, where in the world are our intelligence agencies? They are the ones who informed Feinstein of his that he had handlers, not just simply people with whom he had little conversations, had handlers from the Chinese government driving his efforts.
Right, and when you witness a cover-up like this, who knows what you can believe, but the limited information that we've heard is that they said, okay, he stole political information, but not national intelligence, so we're not going to prosecute him, which, by the way, of course you can prosecute. The FBI finds ways of prosecuting people when they want to. For one thing, you could presumably charge him with the Foreign Agent Registration Act, just like Manafort. But what the sense that I get is that Feinstein told them, hey, there's no need to prosecute this, let's just make it go away quietly, and the FBI was happy to do her bidding.
Well, it's almost presages the Comey struggles between gross negligence for in the investigation of Hillary Clinton, and landing on, instead of gross negligence, extreme carelessness, which did not mandate prosecution. He said. It turns out that that's a false, if you will, choice, and not true at all. Look, let's go to Feinstein's tweet responding to the president, calling her out. This is Feinstein's response to the Trump tweets. The FBI told me, she acknowledges, told me 5 years ago it had concerns that China was seeking to recruit an administrative member of my California staff despite no access to sensitive information. I took those concerns seriously, learned the facts, and made sure the employee left my office immediately. Well, now that sounds absolutely casual and harmless. No threats, no secret, access to secret information. But again, it wasn't a driver either. It was her office manager.
Well, keep in mind the way that, she didn't express any outrage here. The cognitive dissonance is enough to make your head explode. I thought we cared about meddling. I thought we cared about national security and classified information. And when it happens to the Democrats, as it has time and time again, they kind of just take such a casual attitude. Remember, Feinstein was the one who, when the Intelligence Community Inspector General, Charles McCullough, who was an Obama appointee, he was kind of the one who actually found classified information on Hillary's secret email server. And he said that he was bullied by Dianne Feinstein until he dropped it, which is a pretty huge deal.
And another huge deal, she's not unacquainted with huge deals. Remember, it was Senator Feinstein, as chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, when it was discovered that John Brennan's CIA had been surveilling the committee's servers. First, he denied it. So they not only spied on the Senate Intelligence Committee, which has oversight responsibility in addition to everything else. If that wasn't bad enough, they were in charge of oversight. First of all, he denied doing so, then had to admit he did, and then she said, well, we're not going to prosecute anybody, despite his actions as the head of the CIA in that agency surveilling. I mean, Feinstein has a record here. One wonders why anyone listened to her when they started talking about a special counsel, for crying out loud.
Right, and this is kind of what the Congress does. They would rather be compromised than embarrassed. And she just said, look how embarrassing this is. The Chinese must be laughing at us. And I think they are. I think the Chinese are laughing all the way to the bank when this guy is still out there in public life with no consequences.
Well, maybe this explains something else, Luke, that's worth pursuing, and that is maybe the Chinese had so much on her that she was incapable of giving up her access or in any way thwarting the many sources at the CIA that she had access to and who were sharing intelligence with her and her committee. This looks very dangerous and potentially extraordinarily explosive.
Yes, and look at how the FBI handled it. They merely told her what they had learned and allowed her to handle that. Contrast that to what they did with Donald Trump when they basically infiltrated the campaign instead of just going to him and saying, look, there may be problems with your staffers. We wanted to make you aware.